All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making the plays. You talking the game, get you to the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
Well, all right, folks, we're back here for episode number 2 with 2 men and a star, talking about everything Cowboys related. And as you can see, free agency, Tony. Oh, my Lanta. Free agency is definitely in full swing, my brother.
That's the bad part. Free agency don't even start till Wednesday. This is just trade. This ain't even like people can leave yet.
It's like it's like watching the preliminaries, but Cowboys, they're making a few moves, obviously. We'll start off with the Cooper trade. Mario Cooper got traded to the Cleveland Browns. Refresh my memory, I believe they got a second round pick and a third round pick. Am I right?
No, they got a 5th round and then they swapped 6th round picks.
That's what it was. My bad. 5th. So yeah, they got a 5th and a 6th. Now, obviously, they didn't get much in the way of picks, but I think the main thing for the Cowboys, what they were trying to do was get off underneath this cap hell that they're in, and they got basically rid of $100 million or $60 million. I mean, they got rid of a lot of damn money, and I think that was really the main focus of the trade. Now they did get a 5th round and a 6th round, but I think the main focus for those guys was to get out from underneath that cap. How do you feel about them trading Amari Cooper? I mean, let's be honest. Last year he didn't even hit 1,000. I think he got 865 yards. I think around 8 touchdowns or so. So I think he got like 68 catches, something of that nature. And he's just not really putting up, great numbers. So do you think he's going to be missed by the Cowboys? And do you think that what they got in return for him and what they basically got rid of in terms of cap space, do you think that makes it all worth it?
I mean, I think Dallas is going to miss him because, I mean, you think about it. You look at the wide receiver core that we had last year. You had Amari Cooper, which is still going to be a big name. He's still considered a number 1. He's going to be definitely the number 1 in Cleveland now that Jarvis Landry has been released by the Browns. He was a big name. And I don't know if you remember when we first drafted Michael Gallup a few years ago and he was a rookie. You saw all the double teams that he was getting. He could not get separation. He couldn't break free. And to be honest, that was when our wide receiver core was probably at its worst because you had Gallup, you had Beasley, and you had Allen Hurns, which Allen Hurns was kind of an overpaid number 2, and to me never really kind of lived up to the potential of what he was when he was in Jacksonville. I think he's definitely going to be missed. I think he's definitely going to be missed just in the locker room because, I don't know if you've heard Michael Gallup talk about him, but I mean, he couldn't sing Amari Cooper's praises enough for what he did for him, for what he did for Lamb. So I think he's going to be missed. I do like the fact that Dallas, got the cap thing under control. I more or less wish that we would have actually gotten rid of DeMarcus Lawrence because I'll be honest with you, with the exception of the 90s, Dallas hasn't really been a defensive-focused team for years. And I feel like the 90s, they weren't really even a defensive-focused team. It was just one of those. It coincided with the fact that they're heavy in the offense, and it happened to work out extremely well that way. And I don't like what they got in return. I feel like you could have at least bargained for, I would say, a 3rd rounder, no more than that, because I get it. For Cleveland, you're taking on, the rest of that contract. It's $20 million a year. And then, of course, they signed Gallup to a 5-year, I think it's $62.5 million contract. So it equals out to, I think it's about $15 million per year. So they're saving about $4 to $5 million bucks a year by doing that. I just kind of wish they would have at least gotten a 3rd. You could probably even keep just trading the sixth out. I feel like in the 5th, then you're more or less you're drafting guys for depth than you are actual starters a lot of times. And especially in a draft this year where we need the offensive line because there's talks of us even getting rid of Lael Collins. And I mean, this is the draft to rebuild our offensive line. And I feel like them doing that and not really getting much back for him was, to me, a big mistake.
Yeah, so the thought process is they're going to make CeeDee Lamb the number one. They're going to bring Gallup in. I guess he'll be the number two. And then I don't know if they plan to keep Wilson or not. They had talked about getting rid of Wilson. Honestly, I think for other salary cap purposes, which I think they should keep Wilson because I think he did pretty well last year, and I think that he could be a good functional number three. And then of course they got Dalton Schultz. They're going to sign under contract. So I think, but my thing about it is Gallup is coming back, and he's coming back from a torn ACL. Am I right? That was his torn ACL, right? I believe it was.
Yeah, it was his ACL.
Yeah, so he's coming back on a torn ACL, and there's no, when you come back from ACL, I don't know how much it's going to affect his speed or how much it's going to affect him, but to commit $62 million over 5 on a guy that's coming back off of injury, I mean, how do you feel about that?
I mean, again, compared to Amari's, I mean, it's $40 million cheaper.
Yeah,
like Amari, we signed to a 5-year, $100 million. Gallup, 5-year, over $60 million. So I mean, you're saving $40 million, and I think it's like any type of player when they're coming off of an injury like that. It's high risk, high reward. We may never see the Michael Gallup that we saw prior to last year ever again. But who knows? We may have signed him for relatively cheap, and we get our wide receiver for years to come, and dude is solid for the remainder of his career. So I like it, and I kind of like the fact that Gallup also wasn't like, hey, I want to go out and get paid number one wide receiver type money. He's
right.
like, I want to get paid what I'm owed. I like being in Dallas, and I think he fits really well in Dallas.
And the flip side of the coin is obviously they're taking Amari Cooper out of the slot, not Amari Cooper. They're taking CeeDee Lamb out of the slot and throwing him into the number one spot. Do you think that he's going to be able to flourish at the number one? Or because I mean he looked pretty good at the slot. I just don't know if a slot can transfer over to number one. Do you think he's going to have the speed and the agility to play that number one?
I think he is, but I kind of agree with you. I think if he's going to be a number one, he's going to have to be the slot receiver, because I feel like that's where he does his best work. You can put Gallup on the outside. He's a little bit of a bigger body and can do that. I don't see I don't really see CeeDee doing that. Now, if they are able to bring back Wilson, I would say you could honestly use those as kind of interchangeable. You put Lamb on the outside, even if you don't really intend to throw it to him. CeeDee Lamb's still going to get that double coverage on the outside, and then you have Wilson in the slot. But Wilson's also a big guy too. So, I mean, you could honestly put Wilson even on the outside and just have Amari in the slot. And I feel like you could really be set either way when you do that.
And I feel like that this year's offense really needs to start using motion more. And I would like to see CeeDee Lamb in motion going from either the left side or the right side, just to give, the defense – on their toes. I mean, that's the one thing I think they were lacking last year. I think they were just so damn predictable because they didn't use any motion hardly at all. What do you think about that with the Cowboys?
Oh yeah, I think motion, and honestly, just designing some different plays. Like, you probably remember when Des Bryant was complaining about when he left. It was like, yeah, you immediately know what stance they're going to be in. You immediately know what play they're going to run. And I think that's a lot of Dallas's killer is, the first 8 games of the season, you saw how Dallas was rolling. And I think it was because people were like, oh crap, this isn't their typical sets, their typical packages. Well, obviously as you study film more and more, you see, oh, there's the pattern. This is what they're going to do. This is probably what they're going to run. This is who they're going to favor. And I think that's what honestly ended up biting Dallas in the ass later on in the season is they're like, okay, well, we've got you figured out now. Now we don't have to worry about you.
And that's exactly the way I was feeling about it. Let's move on real quick to Zeke. I know I kind of briefly mentioned Zeke, and we were talking about jerseys in the pregame and whatnot before we went live. Looking at Zeke Elliott, he's the other part of the equation, right? You got the 3-headed monster that was getting those $100 million contracts. Obviously, Dak was one. Amari was the second one. And of course, then you had Zeke at number 3 getting the $100 million. And obviously, that Zeke, just like Amari, really was not putting up any kind of numbers at all worthy of that contract over the last year, even almost last 2 years. Do you think that he's going to be, or do you think the Cowboys will think about shopping Zeke, or do you think he's still solidified in the rotation?
I I don't think either. I don't think Dallas is going to shop him because I'll be honest with you, I don't know how many teams are going to be willing to. Obviously they're not going to give us like a top round pick for him. They're not going to want to take on that contract for
Right.
basically now an average running back. Like if you would have done this maybe 2018, 2019, yeah, we could have probably still got quite a bit for Zeke and no big deal. But now with that contract, and that's honestly part of why I think Dallas won't trade him because I don't think anybody will take him. B, they can't really release him because he's still a major cap hit whether they keep him or not. So I think for Dallas, it's one of those we'll keep him, see what we can still get out of him, kind of show him that we do still appreciate him. There is loyalty, and if he's able to do good, awesome. But if not, we'll keep him on the roster until we're able to find a better opportunity to cut him and potentially not have as bad of a cap hit when we do. But I honestly, like I said, like we were talking about in the pregame show, if there was two players I had to pick to cut off of Dallas as far as cap casualties, I'd rather have gotten rid of DeMarcus Lawrence and I would have rather gotten rid of Zeke. I would have rather kept Amari because even though he did have a bad year last year, I mean, you look at Dak's numbers with him, and Dak is a completely different quarterback. Now, I wish Amari would be a little bit more available when it comes to other than home games, but
Right.
I mean, if I only get you for 8-9 games, I only get you for 8-9 games. But those games better be damn wins, damn it. Like we better get a
Oh
dub
yeah.
out of at least all 8 or 9 of those from you.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Absolutely. And I wonder with Zeke and his ineffectiveness. I mean, you could say, I mean, I guess you look at Pollard, and Pollard had no problems, putting up yardage and getting, around 4 or 5 yards, whatever it was per carry. But it seemed like when it came to Zeke just always he always was getting stopped at the line. Like he just could not get those big gains or what have you. And I know Zeke is more of a north-south runner, but do you feel like the offensive line, and which we'll talk more about that here in a minute, but do you think the offensive line was just as much at fault for him not getting the production, or do you think it just mainly fell on Zeke?
I think honestly it mainly falls more on Zeke. I think the O line had its issues, but I mean, like you said with Pollard still getting 4 or 5 yards of carry behind the same offensive line. It's not like we're
Right.
rotating out that many different personnel in between when we have Pollard in or not. I think Zeke has just become very predictable now. You saw used to it would he'd kind of cut back a little bit and then he'd immediately head first into the hole and take people on head on, but now with Pollard, I think with Pollard, what gives him such an advantage is because Zeke is still considered the number one, people play and prepare for Zeke. Like you can kind of play and prepare for Pollard, but only so much. And you never know when Dallas is going to bring them in. Obviously, if Dallas brings Pollard in, okay, is he actually going to be the featured back? Is he going to run it? Is it going to be Zeke? So, and I think defensive coordinators kind of have a hard time matching personnel for personnel on that, which is why I think when they played Denver actually had some really fast linebackers. They have a lot of young fast linebackers that could get to Pollard, which is why I think Dallas struggled in the run game overall. And I think with Zeke, just the fact that he is a north and south running back, they already know, okay, all we got to do is just stuff that interior line. More than likely they're going to hit the left guard because left guard is the weak spot of that offensive line. And to me personally, I think it's the left guard in the center, which is where Zeke likes to go to if Zach Martin is blocked, and then it's just game over from there.
Do you feel? Let me ask this, because I kind of feel like, I really kind of feel like they got away from the run game with Zeke. I feel like they weren't giving him really a lot of opportunities. And even Pollard, even to that point, not a lot. They were more going with the pass 9 times out of 10 than they were with the run. And I do feel like they were doing that because, just like you said, Zeke just wasn't being productive. Even though Pollard was getting his, Zeke wasn't getting his, and that just forced them to go away from the run, or they just weren't putting him into the run spots.
I think both, and I think if you look back at some of the games that Dallas lost, they were having to play from behind because you look at some of the games where it's like you look at Denver, they couldn't do the run or the pass, and then next thing you know they're down 30-0. So it's like, okay, well now we just have to throw the ball. And I think for them too, I think a lot of it goes back on Kellen Moore because Kellen Moore just immediately was like, okay, I'm going to abandon the run. We're just going to pass. lot of short over the middle passes to like Dalton Schultz, maybe get kind of a couple of big plays from Lamb, Wilson, maybe some trick plays with Wilson throwing a Lamb, different stuff like that. I think honestly it was just Kellen Moore is so quick to abandon the run. And I want to hear what you think. I personally think that once Zeke got hurt, we should have benched Zeke, let him get better. And then I think we should have went and got a third running back. Because, I mean, Pollard is not bad, but we saw once people knew that Pollard was the starting running back, he struggled a little bit because they were like, okay, we're prepared for Tony Pollard because that's all we have to worry about. Corey Clement, he's a journeyman running back that, he did decent for the Eagles. He did decent for Washington, and now he's with Dallas. I think they should have went and got maybe another running back to kind of alternate in the mix. Now, who I don't really know, because obviously Baltimore was running through running backs like wet tissues. So I mean, do you think that Dallas should have tried to go after another running back? Like, should they have tried to trade for somebody?
Yeah, I personally agree with you on bringing in another running back for sure. If anything else, just to give a change of pace. I think, like you said, I think they could have probably moved away from or traded away from Clement, and I think Chase Edmonds signed with Miami. Mm-hmm. I think they could have went after Chase Edmonds. I think Chase Edmonds performed well, and I think he would have performed just as good behind our offensive line as well. And I probably would have packaged up or figure out I don't know what year is Zeke in on that contract. Is he on his second year of that $100 million? Or is it this first? Or was this the first year?
I think this is his second. Actually, no. I think it might be his first year. It's either his first. Yeah,
I think it's the first year of that deal. So I don't really know if, like you said earlier, I don't know if anybody's going to take on that $100 million contract, even if it is by trade. So I think we're just stuck with Zeke for a while. Honestly.
You know who I would have loved to see them trade for, and I feel like he didn't really get the full respect he got when he was with his previous team because they happened to get a double hit in running backs. I would have loved to get Giovanni Bernard. I remember watching him in Cincinnati. Yeah. I thought he was solid, and then they got Joe Mixon, and I was like, oh, damn, Cincinnati has a two-headed running back monster. And
they
never really used him.
Yeah, and then Bernard, I think he wound up catching on with Tampa, wasn't it? Is it Tampa where he's at now? Yeah. I wouldn't mind a Giovanni Bernard or a Chase Edmonds. I think either one of those two guys would have fit in perfectly with what the Dallas had. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't Bernard catch the ball out of? He also can catch the ball, correct? Yeah, I mean, he can run, but he can almost be like a Kevin Falk was for the Patriots type of guy.
Yeah, he's a very good pass catcher. And Damian wants to know if Dallas would sign Saquon. I personally say no. I just say no because of Saquon's injury history. I mean, I think Dallas's offensive line is significantly better than New York's, but I think Saquon would kind of be in the same situation with us as he was with New York. When New York would go down, or if they would be down early, what would they do? They'd ride Saquon, whether it's, having him run the ball, whether it's having him be a pass catcher because the wide receivers are covered, or Evan Ingram just isn't being Evan Ingram. So, I mean, if he was cheap, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to have him because then I think if you did have Zeke, Saquon, and Pollard, that'd be a hell of a trio as far as like splitting the reps. But Saquon's health is what would scare me quite a bit personally.
And that's kind of where I was feeling. I feel like if you got Saquon at maybe a little bit above the vet minimum, because let's be honest, right now he misses so many games that I would hate to invest any kind of real money into him and then only watch him sit on the bench, and then I'm even further in cap hell than what I already am. So it's almost kind of like I'd have to bring Zeke on, I'd have to bring Saquon on in a prove it deal type situation. Prove to me that you can stay healthy, and then we'll reward you on the back end. Yeah. But I just don't think Saquon's going to even entertain that anyway. So I think it's almost unrealistic to look at Saquon just because of those factors alone. I think, like you said, I think Bernard, I think Chase Edmonds, I think those are probably your more realistic guys you could bring in and then, kind of go from there. And let's be honest, if Zeke's not performing, then I hate to say it, but you bench $100 million guy because I'm pretty sure if Chase Edmonds is performing and Pollard's performing, then you got to go with what's getting you the yardage on the field. And I just feel like Zeke has lost a step. I think he's lost a little bit of his speed. I think he's lost a little bit of his intensity. And I think that's probably why he's also not getting through the hole just as much as anything else. Christian McCaffrey, I mean, again, another guy that kind of stays, injury prone a lot now here more recently later in his career. But then again, I mean, if the Dallas isn't used, the thing about the Panthers is they use Christian McCaffrey almost damn near solely intensively as their offense. I think if he brought him into Dallas, he wouldn't have to carry nearly as much of the load as what he did with Panthers, and he could probably prolong his career. And if he can prove and pass the physical and stay healthy, then yeah. But I don't know if the Panthers are going to want to trade McCaffrey for Zeke. I don't know if they would be willing to pull that type of trigger.
No, and I think like you said, they ride McCaffrey so hard. I feel like McCaffrey and Saquon are really in the same exact position. They're in franchises that are completely trying to rebuild themselves for years. They've moved off of a franchise quarterback that kept them even remotely relevant in a conversation. Their offensive lines are crap, and they're always having to play from behind. And I feel like Saquon and Christian both are just one of those, they can catch out of the backfield, they can run, but they get hit and hurt all the time because nobody else can make a play. So yeah, I wouldn't. And to be honest with you, I think the Panthers are going to push extremely hard for Deshaun Watson, and you had best believe CMC is going to be probably one of those front runner pieces of, they're going to probably trade CMC. They're probably going to trade 3 first-round picks and probably somebody else, maybe even Sam Darnold, to go get Deshaun Watson if they can. And yeah, I think CMC would probably leave. And I, like you said, I don't see Dallas, not Dallas. I don't see Carolina being like, oh yeah, we'll take Zeke. Zeke's healthier,
Yeah.
but we're not going to get the same amount of production on the field from him, even if he is healthier.
Oh, I think that would absolutely. I think Zeke on the Panthers would actually doom the Panthers because, like you said, he's a north-south kind of guy. He doesn't really do a lot of catching, so and that's what they rely on with Christian, and especially since they don't really have a true number one. That's just gonna put a lot of pressure on Zeke, and I don't think that would bode well for them at all. Even if they did try to go for Deshaun Watson, he also has a no trade clause, and when Deshaun looks at that lineup. And he says, hey, you guys don't have jack crap I can throw to, especially with the other teams out there that are trying to bid for me, like the Eagles. I think the Eagles had 3 first-rounders. I mean, the Eagles look a heck of a lot better than that. So,
yeah. I mean, that to me is why I think honestly, if there's a team that's going to go get Deshaun Watson, I think it is Philly, because they could do it just this year. They can give up all 3 of their first-round picks for just 1 year. And you can give up Jalen Hurts, and I think they give up Fletcher Cox too, because they're like, Fletcher Cox is kind of at the tail end. I think they want to move on, kind of rebuild, retool a young defense. I mean,
right.
You have all 3 first-round picks this year. It's still a decent draft. You can go get yourself, some offensive line and defensive linemen. Probably going to get a couple decent wide receivers in free agency. Hell, they could sign Jarvis Landry, and I mean, think about it. Then you'd have Devontae Smith. You'd have Jarvis Landry. Deshaun has immediately 2 weapons he can throw to there, and Dallas Goedert. They retool their offensive line and their defense, and I mean, Philly's back in the game. So I mean, to me, this year would probably be the perfect year for Philly to trade, because they have all the trade capital to be able to do that if they want to.
So Jarvis Landry got released by the Browns, so he's out there. He's available. What do you think he's going to look for in terms of contract if he was to sign? Do you think he's going to be in the per year range? Do you think he's going to want like 15, 20 million a year, or is he going to want like 8 to 10 million? What do you think he's looking for? Because I'm wondering if we let go of Wilson, if we let go of D-Law and made a play for Jarvis to come in and pair up with CD and pair up with Gallup, could we then afford him?
I think so, and I think it also depends on what team he would go to. Like if he goes to the Jags, I mean, he's going to be the number 1, and if I'm Jarvis, I'm gonna be like, hey, if I'm going to be the number 1, you're going to pay me number 1 type money. Like, because I mean,
Right.
why not? Because it's either, because if I'm one of these wide receivers, I look at it at 2 things. Either do I want to win a Super Bowl? If I do, personally, I would take less money. I know that's not the new NFL thing. You try to do both. You try to get all the money you can, and you try to get a Super Bowl ring. To be honest, depending on what Tampa Bay is able to do with Chris Godwin, I could see him very easily going to Tampa Bay and just kind of filling in that spot. And I mean, think about it. he could be like, "Hey, I'll take less because I know I could potentially win a ring." And
Right.
Chris Godwin can go. And I mean, I feel like that would be a great target for Tom to be able to throw to, especially considering the fact that Jarvis can be the outside. He can also be over the middle. And yeah, Damon's saying that apparently he's already making a deal with the Jags. Probably Ian Rappaport tweeted it if I had to bet.
Yeah, and hey, I mean that would be a good guy to pair up with a young quarterback, and also that new coach and Peterson. So yeah, man. I mean, I see that where I can see that. I think Jarvis, him going to the Jags though, he's got to think to himself, all right, I'm going to a rebuild team, so I know I'm not going to be competing for the Super Bowl anytime soon. So that's the only thing that kind of makes me curious about Jarvis because he's a little longer in the tooth in his career. So it's almost like he's giving up on a Super Bowl and then going to the Jags. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I do want to throw out one real quick thing from CBS Sports. Brandon Sheriff, the right guard from Washington, is going to sign with Jacksonville.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so Washington just completely took a big step back.
Yeah, they did.
Carson Wentz going to get hurt even more.
Hey, look, I don't understand that. How do you let a guy like that go when you just brought in your big gun? Why would you?
Well,
I don't understand that.
Well, obviously it's Washington, so I mean, take that for what we will. But I think a lot of it just comes down to the fact that I don't think they were wanting to pay him the type of money that he's owed. Because I mean, you think about it, you look at the guards in the NFL. If I had to name you the top 3 guards right now in no particular order, I would say Quentin Nelson, Brandon Sheriff, and Zach Martin.
Right.
Hands down. So I mean, I don't think Washington wanted to pay, to be honest with you. And I just think this kind of further shows that Washington is going to continue to be a dumpster fire until Dan Snyder gets rid of the team.
And that's not coming anytime soon because I think that was going to come. That would have already came when he underwent all those investigations, and he's still there. So I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon. Yep. Quick. So then we move on to Connor Williams. We'll talk about the Cowboys' offensive line for a minute because obviously that's a sore spot. So they're looking at probably revamping the offensive line. I guess they believe in Steele enough that they can go ahead and let go of Lyle Collins. And I guess they believe enough in Connor McGovern that they can let go of Connor Williams. I don't see it. I don't see those two guys being the guys. I don't know. I mean, I don't think they're bad, but I just don't think they're the right guys either. I really like Lyle Collins a little bit more than I do Steele, even though I know he has some issues with health and obviously with contract issues. But still, I believe in him a little bit more. Connor Williams, I think I don't know. I do like McGovern. It's not that he's bad, but I really was more into Connor Williams. How do you feel about the offensive line in terms of what they're getting ready to put on the free agency in terms of trade values or what have you, or releasing even?
I kind of agree. I don't think we should trade Lael. If I'm going to be honest with you, and it's probably going to be a little bit of a sore subject. If I'm Jerry Jones, I'm trading Tyron Smith. Trade Tyron Smith, move Lael over to left tackle, and keep Steele at right tackle. Like Steele wasn't bad. I think he got a lot of opportunity to learn and grow. And I think he could still, but yeah, I would get rid of Tyrone. I feel like Tyrone's more of a casualty than he is an asset. And honestly, I would say let Connor Williams go. I say that because I feel like Dallas made 2 mistakes when they drafted him. They drafted him when he was originally a tackle, because I remember watching him at Texas as a left tackle. He was solid. Like he was a great left tackle for Texas. And they brought him in, they put him at guard, and I feel like he's undersized for being a guard. And I feel like for him, I don't know if that transition as far as the movements, the hand placements, everything like that has really been working for him, because think about it. He wasn't really great the first couple of years they started him at left guard. The second year he came back bigger, but he was still getting beat. And then this year it was like, okay, well, now I'm just going to hold. I mean, I would be willing to say at least 30% of our holding penalties was against Connor Williams. And I'm like,
right.
nah, man, you Can't be holding them that damn long. I mean, I get it. You're getting beat, but you can't be holding them. You're killing us just as bad as if you let Dak get sacked.
They get sacked, and that's exactly right. I mean, it's really about the same because you're losing the yardage regardless. I mean, whether or not. So, I when I remember the 49ers game, I that first half and all the penalties that we took in that first half. That I guess that's another reason why I feel like our offensive line is just hurting right now. Which kind of brings us to the point of, we're drafted at number 24 in the first round. Should the Cowboys try to trade up for an offensive lineman, or do you think that they'll stay at 24 and hope that an offensive lineman falls there? I mean, or do you think at 24 maybe they go defense instead of, because I've seen some mock drafts that have the Cowboys draft a cornerback at 24. Even though I feel like they should be really looking forward towards an offensive lineman, I think would be better suited. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been saying it a lot for the last few weeks. I want Dallas to move up to, I would say about 17, 18, and I want them to get the center out of Iowa, Tyler Lindenbaum, because he's probably the best center in the draft. He's been solid for Iowa. I mean, if there's one thing Iowa Big Ten football is known for, it's great offensive linemen. I mean, Brandon Sheriff is coming out of Iowa. And played with, I think he probably played with Linder. No, he didn't play with Linderbaum. He's been in the league too long. But I mean, you talk about one of the best centers in the draft at a position that you desperately need with center. I mean, you couldn't really ask for much better. And I feel like at 24, he's not going to be there because there's a lot of other teams that maybe they solved their quarterback issue in free agency. Or, if you look at Washington, Washington kind of they think they solved their quarterback. Well, now they lost their guard. So maybe they move their center over to guard and they draft Linderbaum out of Iowa to just kind of reshore up the offense. So, I mean, to me, I want them to go offense. I haven't really seen much of the cornerback wise that's even going to be on the board that I would want to go after. About the only secondary person I'd want to go after is the kid out of the strong safety out of Notre Dame. I think Kyle Hamilton, I think his name is.
I think so.
Yeah, that would probably be the only defensive back that I would be like, okay, I would spend a first round pick on him, but he's going to be gone long before 24 hits.
Oh, absolutely, he will be. Absolutely. And this, I mean, with this draft, it's going to be heavily offensive line, defensive line, and probably some secondary thrown in. So I don't know. That's what I was saying. I don't know at 24 if there's going to be even an offensive lineman that's good enough to be drafted at 24. That would be an impact type of guy for our offensive line. I don't unless we trade up to try to do that. Yeah. And then again, if you trade up, what are we going to give up to trade up?
Yeah. And I will say too, offensive line is going to be even more imperative for us because the Eagles just signed Hassan Reddick to a 3-year, $45 million deal. So now they have another great pass rusher.
Yeah,
Dallas's offensive line will have to deal with. So yeah, I agree. I think this is the draft to shore up the offensive line, shore up the defensive line. But I think the big thing, like you said, what would Dallas have to trade to get to go up a few spots to potentially get the center? That's why I shot for kind of 17, 18, because it's not that many spots up. It's not that many spots back. I feel like you could probably do that. Maybe take that extra 5th round pick from Cleveland, maybe even your 6th rounder, swap those so you can get your center. And then I think they still have a second. I think they have 2 thirds, or they have a 3rd and 2 fourths. So, I mean, to me, typically your first through your 4th rounders typically are a lot of your starters, if not potential starters. And then your 5th and 7th, that's kind of just your depths and your backups, to me personally. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. That's why I was thinking, if and I don't know if this is giving up too much for it, but like you said, I think to go up to 17, 18, somewhere around there, if I could give up my first rounder, if I could package the 24 pick and the 5th and 6th rounder for that, hopefully that would be enough for them to bite on it. That to me would be good enough if I could get offensive lineman out of that. That's starting caliber and could bring an impact type offensive guy.
Yeah.
So When I look at when I look at the conference or the excuse me, not the conference, when I look at the division that we're in, I know the Giants aren't going to do anything. They're just the Giants are. I mean, they're below rebuild. I don't know. They don't even know north, south, east, or west right now. I think they're trying to figure that out as we speak. So I think Dable has his hands on that, trying to figure that out. So I don't see the Giants in the next year or two really doing too much. So I'm not really worried about the Giants in the division. The only two that really concern me is Washington and Philly, and I think Washington concerns me a little bit more than Philly right now, as it stands right now, because they have their number one, they have their running back, they have a good. If Chase Young comes back to his original form, then they're going to have a good defense. And now that they have Carson Wentz, they actually have an actual legitimate quarterback running that team. So I think that Washington could give them their pretty much everything they need to handle. Philly, if they trade those three number ones and then if they somehow pull off of Deshaun Watson, then that could transform Philly into obviously a very legitimate threat. Because let's be honest, they were pretty much. I think wasn't Philly in there? They were in the playoffs. They just got beat in the wild card round, correct?
Yeah, by Tampa Bay, and they ended up losing by 2 scores. But to be honest with you, I mean they were more competitive than what I think people probably thought they were going to be. And I would say if you looked on paper at the score, you'd be like, oh no, they got shellacked like nobody's business. I think they actually did a lot better than what it looks like on the scoreboard.
So if you could predict the future, let's say if it stays, I'll give you 2 scenarios. We'll go with scenario 1 or 3 scenarios. Scenario 1 being just as it is right now. Carson Wentz is with Washington. Philly just stays where Philly is. We are what we are, and maybe we, bring in a free agent or whatever. But do you think that Dallas can still win the division as it's currently constructed, or do you think that they're going to struggle to get the division win?
I think they're going to struggle because I think Dallas is losing a lot of talent, and they're losing not only a lot of homegrown talent, but they're losing a lot of talent that they brought in last year on 1-year deals for players that actually ended up proving that, hey, we can still be, decently viable players. Like Keanu Neal, I think if he was to go to another team that maybe needed kind of a linebacker spot, I think he's gone. I still think we need a safety spot. So Jerron Kearse is potentially going to be gone. DeMonte Casey is going to be gone. We still don't know if Randy Gregory is going to re-sign with Dallas or not. And if we're even going to be able to have the money to sign him. So
yeah,
I think Dallas is still going to probably be the favorite. But I don't think we're going to be nearly as good. I'll be honest. I could see Dallas or Philly winning the division at probably 9-8. And I would probably say Philly probably wins the division because Dallas is going to be playing a first place schedule. Philly is going to be playing a second place. So technically their schedule should be easier. But that time will tell as the season goes on. But I agree. The only 2 teams I'm really not worried about, I'm not really worried about New York because thank goodness Daniel Jones is still the starting quarterback for the New York Giants. So I'll never be worried there. And, Washington, I think Wentz is actually a better improvement than what people will say. I just think he didn't really get a fair shot in Indy because, Indy doesn't really have the greatest wide receivers, and the fact that he was still able to throw 27 touchdowns and 7 picks, I think he's still good. But now with the fact Washington's going to lose one of their key offensive line pieces, I still think they need another wide receiver for Terry McLaurin on the other side, and I'm not completely sold on their run game. And now their secondary, I think, got even weaker too because they're going to release Landon Collins. So I do think Dallas is going to be one of the top 2 favorites, but I wouldn't put them as the favorite to win the division again.
Yeah, starting off with the Carson Wentz thing, that really surprised me. They traded all this stuff for him, and they only give him 1 year, just one. Really, I don't think you can base this. I think they're just moving on so fast from him off of 1 year, and like you said, he didn't have any true number 1 wide receivers, and yet he still put up very good touchdown to interception ratios. That was really, really impressive for what he has. And I think that if anything, they should have kept Carson Wentz and then just look for the draft or free agency, like a Jarvis Landry or something, and bring in a number one, and then you can see what you really have with Carson Wentz based off of that. So I think Indianapolis, I agree. I think they were dumb. I think they made some foolish mistakes in getting rid of Carson Wentz this early in the game. Secondly, I guess you kind of answered my question for the second scenario based off the first scenario, because if you and I agree. I mean, if Philly wins it the way it's currently constructed now, then if Philly was to actually upgrade and get a Deshaun Watson as their quarterback, given what they already have, then that's definitely going to put Philly at the number one spot in the division. And based on that, my only real question is then, if Philly gets Deshaun Watson, how far do they go in the playoffs?
I mean, I think if they get Deshaun, I mean, in the division that they're in, you look at the fact that, what is Dallas's probably biggest Achilles heel, it's their defense, especially in the secondary. And I mean, Deshaun Watson's going to have an absolute field day with that. But the big thing too, though, is can Philly get another wide receiver on the opposite side of Devontae Smith? Because, Jalen Reagor is obviously not it. And I know Eagles fans would trade Jalen Reagor for like a baked potato in like 5 seconds if given the absolute opportunity. They would get rid of him. And I mean, even if hypothetically, even if Philly doesn't get Deshaun, I mean, you still got 3 first-round picks in a very deep draft at pretty much every other position other than quarterback and wide receiver. I mean, Philly could very easily even make the playoffs and be a very big contender even without Deshaun. Because I don't really get the hate on Jalen Hurts either, because I feel like Jalen, to go 9-8 with basically the roster that he had, I mean, that to me was probably the most shocking thing. I had Philly down there at the bottom with New York as far as like just really struggling this year, and Philly was like, no, we're still kind of here. We're not really going to put fear in anybody's hearts, but we're still here.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And again, I mean, if they give it and trust, I feel like if you go 9-8 with a guy who's only got 1 or 2 years in the league, which is nothing, I mean, he's going to go. It's going to take him a little while before you really take off with him. And you're giving up 3 of your 3 first rounders of your future. I mean, what could you do with 3 first round picks when you have a pretty good, already, fairly right out of his rookie season quarterback?
Yeah. Well, and I think the big thing too that even Coach mentioned before, to be honest, and I kind of point to the Rams more than anything. We don't know what these first round picks turn into until after they're already on the field. So I mean, Philly could have 3 first round picks and completely bust on all of them. So I mean, that possibility is always there. You at least know that Deshaun Watson is solid and he is proven, and that he can make it work even with not even the greatest weapons there.
Right. Absolutely, my brother. Well, hey, listen, this is pretty much all the news that has gone on with the Cowboys. Tony, you have any final thoughts on the Cowboys before we get out of here?
Man, I can't wait. I like Jerry. Jerry's probably a great guy. I could probably have a beer with Jerry. Can't wait till Jerry leaves the team. Whether that be he leaves spiritually, he leaves physically, whatever it may be. I cannot wait till Jerry Jones leaves. I'll put it that way.
And I agree. Listen, I think a lot of people that are Cowboys fans would agree with you on that. If he decides to step down or what have you, and Steven takes over the team, are we going to get Jerry 2.0, or do you think Steven goes in a different direction from his father and actually hires an actual GM and takes the team in a different direction?
I think he kind of steps away. I think he does a Jerry reinvented, where how Jerry gets like a yes man at a coach,
right?
Steven gets a yes man as a general manager, but I can't necessarily say I'd be upset if we had a yes man general manager as compared to a yes man as a head coach, and the owner is the one that makes all the other decisions on top of it. So I think Steven will be better, because we have noticed Steven before in the past kind of be like, "Whoa, Dad, no, we don't need to do this. Like, time out, don't do this." So I kind of hope that as Steven takes over more, because I think Steven was actually. I think he was behind Jerry not getting Johnny Manziel back in 2014 and getting Zach Martin instead. So I think if that's any indication, then we should be in good hands. But time will tell.
Yes, it will. I mean, be honest. I think in a perfect world, I'd rather just see a whole new ownership group come in. But
yes,
I mean, at the same time, hey, we'll work with what we got. And till next time, hey, listen. As more things develop, you'll see us back on here again. But for right now, this is pretty much all the news that is going on in Cowboy land. And as anything develops, we will be back on again. And until next time, it's Tony Hollandsworth, aka Terminal Leave. And your boy
in a month.
That's why Tony looks so happy right now, folks. I know about last year you probably saw him a little bit more depressed, and this year he just looks like the weight is coming off of his shoulders, and that is because terminal leave is literally right around the corner for that young man. So, and we wish him well in his new endeavors.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm excited, but I'm nervous.
You'll be fine. Nervous. Anyway, we were all nervous when we got out, but you're gonna be fine. You already got a job interview. You're gonna do just fine. And until next time, hey, it's your boy Jay McLovin, and we will catch you on the rebound. Y'all have a good day.
All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we're making a place. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.